I still remember that chilly November morning like it was yesterday. I stepped into the glass-walled conference room on the 22nd floor of the Harper & Stone building. My heart pounding with a mix of excitement and nerves. The calendar invite said, "Quarterly review and bonus discussion." And I dressed carefully. The crisp navy blazer reserved only for moments when I needed to feel powerful. After 6 years of relentless hustle, missed birthdays, red-eye flights, and endless late nights, I was ready. Ready to be seen. Ready to be acknowledged. Lucas was already there when I arrived. Sitting rigidly with a pen clenched in his hand. His face unreadable. The blinds were drawn tight, letting in just enough light to cast cold shadows across the sleek conference table. The room felt colder than usual, not just from the temperature, but from the unspoken tension lingering in the air. When Lucas cleared his throat and began talking about leadership realignments and departmental restructures, I forced myself to stay silent, to listen carefully. Then came the blow. "Ariana," he said, voice flat and emotionless. "Effective Monday, you'll be supporting Gavin as we transition client strategy under his direction." My mind froze. Supporting Gavin? Gavin, the junior associate who'd asked me how to format a slide deck just days ago. The same guy who once forwarded a confidential client memo to the wrong email list. And my biggest client deal? The one I fought for, negotiated, and closed? It wasn't even mentioned. No congratulations, no bonus, no recognition, just a cold reshuffle. The deal was being integrated into the new structure. That was the word they chose. Integrated, absorbed, erased. I sat there, blinking slowly, my heart hollowing out in that sterile room. After all I had given them, 6 years of everything, I was suddenly the inconvenient one. The one quietly pushed aside. That day, I wasn't just demoted, I was erased. That moment, the one when Lucas said I'd be supporting Gavin, felt like my whole world shifted under me. I blinked, trying to process what I'd just heard. Supporting Gavin? The same guy who'd asked me for help formatting a simple slide deck 2 days ago? Who once accidentally forwarded confidential client information to the wrong email chain? That Gavin? I wanted to ask if he was serious. Was this a joke? But no one else was smiling. No one else seemed surprised. The blinds were still drawn tight, and the cold still bit through the glass walls. The air was thick with something I couldn't name, betrayal. Maybe. Or the kind of silence that screams louder than words ever could. My mind raced back over everything I'd done over the past 6 years. The late nights at the office. Juggling impossible deadlines. The missed family dinners and postponed vacations. The times I stayed up into the early hours smoothing over client meltdowns. Patching together broken promises. Making sure nothing fell apart. All for moments like this, when hard work paid off. When leadership recognized and rewarded loyalty. But this was something else entirely. Lucas's words echoed again. The Lanson deal is being integrated into the new structure. Integrated, not mine anymore. Not, congratulations, Ariana, but, you're absorbed, erased. My heart sank, but I didn't respond. I sat there, nodding slowly as if my very bones had hollowed out and I was just a shell. A shadow of the strategist I once was. I had landed Aldridge & Stone's largest client deal this quarter. A $12 million contract that had taken months of negotiation. Rewriting. Back and forth with the client's CFO. Mira Tran. Everyone in the firm knew it. Everyone except Lucas. Apparently. 6 years of building that trust. 6 years of painstaking work growing the enterprise tech portfolio from nothing to nearly 40% of quarterly revenue. And now? I was sidelined. The deal was no longer mine. The client was no longer mine. I remember sitting in my car afterward. The digital clock blinking 11:17 a.m. The city outside my windshield blurred in the rain. But my mind was stuck in that cold room. My fingers hovered over my phone, trembling slightly. Who do you call when you don't even know how to explain what's been taken from you? I thought about calling my mentor. Maybe my sister. Anyone. But the truth was, I wasn't sure how to start that conversation. How do you explain that after 6 years of pouring your soul into a company, you're suddenly invisible? That all your hard work is just gone? The next few days felt surreal. I kept revisiting my inbox. checking for any signs, an email, a calendar invite, something confirming I was still part of the leadership pipeline. Nothing. Then, by chance, I opened the shared HR folder. There it was, the partner review final voting sheet. Updated 2 days ago. My name, Ariana Parker, removed from the ballot. Beside it, a cold note. No longer under consideration following strategic realignment. I scrolled down and found another name, Gavin McKenzie. Submitted for consideration. The sting was sharp. That same junior associate, who barely knew how to send a proper invite, was now on track for partnership. And I wasn't even in the conversation. That was when the reality hit me like a punch to the gut. They never meant to reward me. They only needed me to finish the deal. Once I did, I became inconvenient, an obstacle to be quietly erased. I closed my laptop slowly, feeling the weight in my chest tighten. 6 years of loyalty, sacrifice, and leadership had vanished with a silent edit in a spreadsheet. No thank you, no call, no explanation, just gone. But I didn't panic. I didn't break down. Instead, I opened a folder I hadn't touched in over 6 months, my backup plan. I'd quietly registered my own LLC months ago. Just in case. The idea was simple. If things ever went sideways at Aldridge & Stone, I'd have a way to keep working on my own terms. That night, while everyone else was asleep or pretending nothing was wrong, I revised the Lanson contract. Just one change. I switched the service provider name from Aldridge & Stone to my own company, AP Strategy Group. Everything else stayed exactly the same. I hit send. There was a strange clarity in that moment. A quiet defiance I hadn't felt in years. The next morning, I woke up to an email from Mira Tran herself. Subject: quick confirmation. Hi Ariana. Just confirming we're sending the initial wire to AP Strategy Group as signed. Correct? Let me know if there are any changes. I stared at that screen. Not Aldridge & Stone. Not Lucas Bennett. Me. My hands didn't shake, but my breath caught. That email wasn't just a clerical detail. It was a validation. Proof that I hadn't just slipped the contract through unnoticed. Mira hadn't blinked. She trusted me. And in that moment, I finally knew. I wasn't just the person who got the deal done. I was the deal. Later that day, I drafted a resignation email to Lucas, to be sent immediately, but I didn't press send right away. I saved it as a draft. Timing, I realized, was everything. They thought I was a tool, a means to an end. But I knew the truth now. I didn't need their approval anymore. I had my own path. The money hit the account of AP Strategy Group hours later, $4 million wired silently. Without fanfare, I sat alone in my apartment. The glow from my laptop screen illuminating my face. The blinds were half closed. The city lights twinkled outside, oblivious to the storm inside me. I wasn't angry. I wasn't triumphant. I was simply done. I had spent 6 years giving everything to a company that no longer valued me. But now, I had something they couldn't take away: control. The next few days were a whirlwind of phone calls, messages, and quiet planning. Former clients reached out. Former colleagues expressed cautious support. Marcus Zhao, a former data analyst I had mentored years ago, called out of the blue. "I don't like how they handled you, Ariana," he said bluntly. "If you're open, I've got a team and clients ready to move with you." It wasn't a flashy offer. It was real. By the end of the week, Marcus was on board. 2 new clients signed within days. My business was growing, slowly, quietly, but steadily. No LinkedIn posts, no viral announcements, just progress. A few weeks later, I signed the lease for a small office space downtown. When the property manager handed me the keys and the paperwork, I paused. Not Harper & Stone, not Lucas Bennett. My name, in bold black letters on frosted glass, a Parker Strategy Group. I stood there for a moment, breathing it all in. It wasn't about proving anything to anyone else anymore. It was about being present. And finally, being proud. Just when I thought I'd started to carve out a new life on my own terms, the unexpected happened, and it shook everything I thought I had under control. It began with an email, a simple message from Lucas Bennett, the man who had erased me from the firm I'd given my life to. Subject line: Ariana, we need to talk. I stared at it for a long moment. the cursor blinking at the bottom of the screen like a heartbeat I couldn't quite catch. For days, I'd avoided responding to any of Lucas's attempts to reach out, partly out of pride and partly because I wasn't sure what to say. But this time, something made me pause. I decided to meet him. It was late afternoon on a cold Wednesday. The city was draped in gray clouds, and the streets glistened from a recent rain. I arrived early to the corner conference room at the East Point offices, a place I once considered a battlefield. Now just a backdrop for what was about to unfold. Lucas walked in exactly on time. His face smaller somehow, his confident posture replaced by a subtle uncertainty I'd never seen before. "Thanks for coming," he said, voice low. I nodded but didn't smile. The chair opposite me was cold and hard, much like the distance between us. He cleared his throat, searching for words. "This transition, it hasn't gone smoothly," he admitted. "I want to find a way for us to collaborate." Collaborate? After everything? I fought the urge to scoff. Lucas proposed a joint advisory structure, that I'd maintain control of a P strategy group. But we'd co-lead the Lanson account under a unified agreement. His words were rehearsed, the kind of corporate speak that masks desperation. I reached into my bag and pulled out a document, a new retainer agreement from Lanson. Signed just 2 days prior. 3 years, $30 million. Sole provider. A P strategy group. I slid it across the table. Lucas read it slowly, blinking as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. "So, it's official?" he asked. Barely above a whisper. "Yes," I said firmly. "It's been official for weeks. This meeting is a courtesy." He looked like he wanted to say something, maybe apologize, maybe explain, but I cut him off. "You didn't choose me when it mattered," I said, voice steady but filled with years of buried pain. "Now, I get to choose not to choose you." The weight I'd carried for years, the need to be seen, validated, recognized, suddenly lifted. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was just gone. Lucas nodded slowly, defeated. "I underestimated you," he admitted quietly. We sat in silence for a moment, the tension thick but somehow less suffocating. Then, without another word, he stood and left. I stayed behind, letting out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Outside, the sun was dipping lower, casting a soft gold light through the windows. For the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel: peace. But peace was fragile, because the fallout from this meeting rippled quickly. Within hours, rumors began swirling throughout Aldridge and Stone. The board was unsettled. Questions flew about the Lanson deal's legitimacy, the sudden shift of authority, and my unexpected control of the contract. I wasn't surprised. I'd been there long enough to know how rumors moved, faster than any official press release, louder than any public statement. By the next morning, the board had scheduled an emergency meeting to address the situation. I wasn't invited, of course, but I knew exactly what was being said. Elaine Merrick, one of the longest-standing board members, reportedly demanded answers. "Where is the Lanson revenue?" she asked sharply. Jack, no longer Lucas, fumbled his response. Something about onboarding delays, paperwork missing, legal transitions. Elaine pressed harder. "We were told this contract was finalized weeks ago." The audit committee chair interjected. "We don't have a signed copy in our records. Legal hasn't logged execution. The client's name doesn't appear in receivables." A heavy silence followed. "Who finalized it?" Elaine asked pointedly. "And finally, Jack said it. My former strategist, Ariana Parker." That was it. No elaboration, no explanation that I was no longer with the company, that I held full legal authority, that the contract had been signed by me on behalf of my own firm. Just my name, hanging in the air like smoke. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt separate, no longer part of their story. Later that night, I received an email from Elaine's assistant. "Ms. Merrick would like to schedule a private discussion regarding recent events. Are you available for a call this week?" I thought about it carefully before replying. "Thank you for reaching out. I prefer not to engage directly at this time." Attached is a summary report outlining the Lanson contract's status, timeline, legal authority, and client communication history. It was a quiet refusal. But in that report, I made one thing crystal clear. The contract was signed by me. The payment made to me. And the client loyal to me, not to Aldridge and Stone. Not to Jack or the board. I never heard from Elaine again. But the board's panic was evident. Backchannel whispers reached me through old colleagues. Lucas had gone silent after I responded. Someone else had to finish the meeting. I imagined him sitting there, face flushed, powerless. Meanwhile, I was busy building. A few days later, Lindsay Maher, a former client who had always CC'd me on everything, reached out. We met at a quiet cafe downtown. And the moment I saw her eyes, I knew the news had spread. "Is it true?" she asked. Breathless, I smiled and nodded. "It's all over the advisory forums," she said. No one saw it coming. She leaned in, eyes bright with curiosity. Was it revenge? I shook my head. It was timing. We didn't discuss contracts that day. But Lindsay made one thing clear. "If you open the door, I'll walk through it." And walk through it she did. Within 2 days, Lindsay sent a formal inquiry. 2 days after that, we signed a 3-month retainer. That was just the beginning. Word spread quietly but surely. Marcus Zhao, the data lead I'd mentored years ago, called me out of the blue. "I don't like how they handled you," he said bluntly. "No surprise there," I replied. "I've got clients ready to move if you're ready to build." It was an offer without fanfare. Just a steady hand reaching out. We met that evening. Marcus brought a folder. Vetted non-competes, infrastructure needs, and a client list. It wasn't flashy. It was real. By 7 p.m., we shook hands in my living room. By Thursday, 2 clients had signed. No celebrations. No viral posts. Just movement. And in that movement, I felt something profound. A shift. The calls I once chased now came to me. Mira Tran spoke to me like a peer, not just a vendor. And then, the moment I signed the lease for my new office space, a place with wide windows, soft oak floors, and my name on the glass, I knew I was home. No longer trapped by someone else's structure. I was finally free to build the culture and legacy I believed in. The days after signing the lease on my new office felt surreal. Like I was living someone else's life. A life I'd only dared to imagine during the long, lonely nights when doubt crept in. But now, with the soft sunlight pouring through those wide windows and the smell of fresh paint filling the air, the reality was undeniable. This was mine, not a project code, not a title beneath someone else's name, but my own space, my own vision. I sat at my desk on the very first morning, sipping coffee, watching the city wake up below. I wasn't just running a business anymore. I was building a legacy. But it wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the team that believed in the vision. The clients who trusted me beyond any corporate facade. And the opportunity to redefine what leadership meant. That shift, the change in perspective, was gradual but profound. I stopped measuring my worth by the validation I'd sought from Aldridge and Stone. I stopped longing for their approval or their recognition. Instead, I began to see that my value wasn't dependent on a corporate ladder or a partner's nod. It was intrinsic, built from years of resilience, knowledge, and relentless drive. One afternoon, Marcus stopped by the office with his team. Watching him interact with my people, the loyalty, the respect, I realized how different this was from my old world. There were no politics, no invisible agendas, just purpose and collaboration. This was what I'd been chasing all along. But change isn't always smooth. I found myself wrestling with old habits, second-guessing, wondering if I was moving fast enough, if I was making the right decisions. Sometimes, the loneliness of leadership felt heavier than any challenge I'd faced before. One evening, after a long day of client calls and strategy sessions, I sat alone in the quiet office. My phone buzzed. A message from Mira Tran. She wasn't just a client anymore, she'd become a trusted partner. "Your vision is inspiring, Ariana," she wrote. "It's refreshing to work with someone who leads with integrity." Those words struck deep. It was the first time I truly felt seen, not for what I'd done under someone else's roof, but for who I was becoming. I thought back to that conference room, to the cold words from Lucas and the silent erasure. I realized then that moment wasn't an end, it was a catalyst. A brutal but necessary awakening that forced me to reclaim my narrative. No longer was I playing their game. I was writing my own rules. And that realization freed me in ways I hadn't imagined. I started mentoring young strategists, women and men who reminded me of the person I used to be. I shared my story, not as a tale of defeat, but as proof that your worth isn't defined by a title or a paycheck. It's defined by your courage to stand up, to step out, and to create something that's truly yours. One of those young strategists, Grace, reminded me why I fought so hard. She was sharp, ambitious, and often frustrated by the corporate walls closing in on her. Seeing her growth under my guidance became one of my proudest achievements. As the months passed, my firm grew steadily. The clients we served weren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. They were partners who valued authenticity and long-term relationships. I no longer dreaded Mondays. Instead, I looked forward to the possibilities. The biggest shift, though, was within me. I stopped fearing failure and started embracing risk. I stopped waiting for permission and started giving myself grace. I stopped shrinking to fit someone else's expectations and began expanding into the leader I was always meant to be. That change in perspective rippled outward, affecting my team, my clients, and the way I approached every challenge. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. And with every step forward, the pain of the past softened. It didn't disappear, it never would, but it became fuel. A reminder of the battles fought and the strength earned. Looking back, I understood something vital. Sometimes, the hardest blows are the ones that free you the most. Because when you lose the illusion of control, you gain something far more powerful, the freedom to build on your own terms. That was the lesson I carried into every meeting, every negotiation, every late night at the office. I wasn't just a strategist. I was a creator, a leader, and above all, a survivor. And the story was far from over. The moment I stepped into my new office that first morning, I felt a quiet shift, like the universe was giving me a second chance. I wasn't just recovering from a painful past, I was opening a door to a future I'd never dared to imagine before. Over the next few weeks, the momentum built steadily. Word spread quietly but powerfully that AP Strategy Group was different, not just another consultancy, but a team led by someone who had been tested, who understood what it meant to fight for every inch of progress. One morning, I opened an email that made my heart race, a message from Andrew Koenig, managing partner at Templar Holdings. They'd been watching my firm's growth and wanted to explore a strategic acquisition. A global rollout, fully funded. It was tempting. The kind of offer that could make any entrepreneur pause and reconsider their path. But something deep inside me said, "Not yet." I replied simply, "Thank you, Andrew. I'm not looking to sell at this time. We're just getting started." That was more than a message. It was a declaration. I was no longer interested in quick wins or shortcuts. I wanted to build something lasting. Something that reflected my values and vision. The response was respectful, and the door remained open. But I knew I was in control, and for the first time. That felt incredible. This new opportunity wasn't just about business growth. It was about rewriting the rules, not just for myself, but for everyone who had ever been told to wait their turn. To play small, to settle for less. My days became a balancing act, managing client relationships, growing the team, refining our service offerings, and fostering a culture of trust and collaboration. Each new client we signed was a victory not just for the firm but for the idea that leadership could be authentic and inclusive. One afternoon, Marcus came by with a proposal, a partnership opportunity to expand into new markets. He laid out a vision for growth, for innovation, for building a legacy that could outlast us all. Together, we began mapping out a roadmap for the future, careful, deliberate, full of possibility. But the true opportunity came when I realized that success wasn't just measured by revenue or contracts signed. It was measured by the impact we made, on our clients, on our team, and on the industry. I started investing more time in mentoring young professionals, hosting workshops, and speaking at industry events. Sharing my story became a way to inspire others to embrace their power and claim their space. There was something profoundly fulfilling about helping others see their own potential, to remind them that they didn't need permission to lead or succeed. The firm grew, but so did my sense of purpose. I wasn't just chasing business goals anymore. I was building a community. One of the proudest moments came when Grace, the young strategist I'd mentored, landed her first major client. Watching her excitement and confidence reminded me of my own journey, the battles fought and the victories won. This new chapter wasn't without its challenges. There were moments of doubt, setbacks, and tough decisions, but I faced them with a clarity and resilience I hadn't known before. Because the greatest opportunity I'd found was the freedom to define success on my own terms, to lead with authenticity, courage, and heart. Looking back, I understood that the painful losses, the betrayals, and the silencing had all been necessary steps toward this moment. I wasn't just rebuilding a career. I was reclaiming my life. The path I walked after stepping out from under the shadow of Aldridge and Stone wasn't easy, but it was transformative. Growth didn't happen overnight. It was slow, steady, and often uncomfortable. It forced me to confront parts of myself I'd long ignored, and to embrace a new version of who I was meant to be. In those early days of running a P strategy group, I wrestled with doubt and fear. Could I really build something from scratch? Was I ready to be not just a strategist, but a leader? The loneliness of decision-making weighed heavily. Every choice felt like it carried the weight of the entire company. But with every challenge came clarity. I realized that my worth wasn't tied to a title or approval from others. It was rooted in my values, my vision, and my ability to stay true to myself. One of the hardest lessons was learning to say no to toxic clients, to distractions, to old patterns of thinking that no longer served me. That was growth, setting boundaries, prioritizing what truly mattered, and trusting my instincts even when the path wasn't clear. I also learned to ask for help, something I'd never done before. Building a team wasn't just about hiring talent, it was about creating a culture of trust and collaboration. Marcus, Lindsay, and Grace became more than colleagues, they were partners on this journey. Together, we created an environment where ideas flourished and everyone felt seen. Mentorship became a two-way street. As I guided others, I found myself growing alongside them, learning patience, empathy, and humility. I began to understand that leadership wasn't about control or power, it was about service and inspiration. There were moments when the past crept back in, emails from Aldridge and Stone, rumors circulating in the industry, old wounds reopening. But instead of retreating, I faced those moments with resilience. I reminded myself how far I'd come and why I refused to be defined by others' expectations. One evening, after a particularly long day, I found myself reflecting on the journey. I remembered the cold conference room where I'd first been sidelined, the lonely nights wondering if I mattered, and the decision to take control by signing that contract under my own company. That decision was a turning point not just professionally, but personally. It marked the moment I stopped shrinking and started expanding, embracing my strengths, my voice, and my vision. Over time, I noticed a shift in how I viewed success. It wasn't just about financial milestones or client wins. It was about authenticity, integrity, and the impact I could have on others. I started to celebrate small victories, a client's heartfelt thank you, a team member's breakthrough idea, a new partnership built on trust. The pressure to prove myself faded, replaced by a quiet confidence rooted in self-awareness. One particularly meaningful moment came when Grace, after months of mentorship, confidently presented a new strategy to a high-profile client, and the client loved it. Watching her light up with pride reminded me of the power of belief and encouragement. That night, I realized that my growth wasn't just about me. It was about the legacy I wanted to leave, a legacy of empowerment, courage, and transformation. I embraced vulnerability as a strength, not a weakness. I learned to lean into discomfort, knowing it was a sign of growth. I found joy in leading with heart, and power in staying true to my values. This growth journey also taught me forgiveness, not to excuse past betrayals, but to free myself from their hold. I let go of resentment, replacing it with focus and forward momentum. Today, I stand taller, not because I've never stumbled, but because I've learned to rise every time. My story is no longer about loss or erasure. It's about reclaiming my voice, rewriting my narrative, and creating a future on my own terms. And with every challenge ahead, I carry that growth, that unshakable belief that I am more than the roles I once played. I am a leader, a creator, a force, and this is only the beginning. The journey from that cold conference room to the warm, sunlit space I now call my own has been more than a career shift. It's been a transformation of the soul. I used to think success meant climbing the ladder, earning titles, collecting accolades, but now I know it's so much more. Success is about authenticity, owning your story, embracing your power, and refusing to be defined by anyone else's limits. There were moments when I wanted to give up, when the weight of betrayal and silence felt too heavy. But those moments taught me resilience. They showed me that sometimes, the darkest nights bring the brightest dawns. I'm not the woman who walked into that conference room, hoping for recognition and finding rejection. I'm someone who took that rejection and turned it into fuel, the fire that ignited a new path. There is something profoundly liberating in reclaiming your narrative, in standing tall when the world tries to push you down, in choosing courage over comfort, passion over fear. I built a P strategy group not just as a business, but as a beacon for others who've been sidelined, overlooked, or underestimated. I want them to know they don't have to wait for permission to lead. They don't have to shrink to fit into someone else's frame. You don't need a title to make a difference. You don't need anyone's approval to take up space. Freedom comes from refusal. Refusal to accept less than you deserve. Refusal to stay silent when your voice matters most. Refusal to play small in a world that often rewards conformity. That's the lesson I carry every day. And I'm not alone. I see it in the faces of my team, talented, driven individuals who've chosen to build something real and meaningful. I hear it in the voices of clients who trust us not because of a brand name, but because of who we are. I feel it in the growing momentum, the quiet victories, the steady progress. Sometimes, people ask me if I regret leaving Aldridge and Stone. I don't, because it wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of my true story. The moment the door closed behind me that day was not a goodbye. It was an invitation to step into my power. To redefine success, to lead with heart. If there's one thing I want you to take away from my journey, it's this: your value is not determined by others. Your worth is not tied to a position or a paycheck. You are more than the boxes you've been put in. You have the power to rewrite your narrative, to create your own path, and to lead in a way that's authentic and bold. If you've ever been told to wait your turn, to tone it down, or to know your place, this is your permission to say no. No to waiting. No to shrinking. No to silence. Your voice matters. Your story matters. And your freedom begins the moment you claim them both. So stand tall. Speak up. Walk boldly into the life you deserve. Because the world needs leaders like you, fierce, fearless, and unapologetically you. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please share it, subscribe, and in the comments, tell me about the moment you realized you were meant to walk your own path. Because that moment, that first brave step, is where freedom truly begins. The biggest lesson I've learned is this: your value is inherent, not granted. It's not something someone else can take away or erase. When you face rejection, sidelining, or betrayal, it's not a reflection of your worth, it's a reflection of someone else's limitations. True strength comes from reclaiming your narrative, refusing to shrink, and creating your own space to thrive. Freedom isn't given, it's taken. Through courage, clarity, and conviction. If you find yourself in a place where you feel overlooked or undervalued, take a moment to reassess your power. Start by recognizing what only you bring to the table: your unique skills, your relationships, your integrity. Then, build on that foundation, whether that means starting your own venture, seeking out new opportunities, or simply setting firmer boundaries. Take ownership of your story. Connect with mentors or peers who support your vision. Remember, growth and change often require discomfort. Embrace it as a sign you're moving forward. Most importantly, don't wait for permission to lead your life. The moment you decide to lead yourself is the moment you begin to truly win. Thank you for choosing to listen to this story among thousands of stories out there. Like and subscribe to continue listening to the latest stories.